All right, let's dive straight into our last lesson to learning jQuery for total noobs, and that's going to be something called AJAX. AJAX, I remember the first time I learned about it, it sounded so hard, but it's really not. Don't overthink this at all. All this manipulation stuff we've been doing on the page, like changing out the form data and kind of getting this Twitter feed, that's pretty much AJAX, except we're going to be getting the data from a third party or a separate URL. And that's like the best layman terms example I can walk through. So what we're going to do is we're going to move this Twitter data to a separate URL, retrieve it, and then populate the feed doing a true AJAX request. Now, a couple things about AJAX. AJAX is done through JSON requests, or at least for our purposes. And if you haven't heard of JSON before, JSON is just a JavaScript object. It stands for JavaScript Object Notation, I think. And if you look here, I just formatted this JSON string that I put at test.json, where if we look, it's identical to the array that we built earlier. Now this isn't just a JavaScript thing. All programming languages love JSON. It's super easy to parse. It's easy to work with. And you'll be seeing a lot of this if you are about to learn PHP or some other kind of language out there. So get ready to see a lot of JSON. And our goal is to simulate if you were going to a URL and getting JSON and putting it here. So let's do that. And in order to do that, you need to run JSON from a web server. So right now we've been running from file, just kind of locally doing some tests, messing around. I'm going to open up Prepros and create a server. So if you use Prepros, CodeKit, Vagrant, if you're working locally some other way, you need to get at localhost or an IP address for this to work. Otherwise, you'll get security issues from Chrome and you'll be stuck. All right. So with that being said, let's comment block all this tweet data out because we don't need it right now. And we're going to actually delete this because our goal is to retrieve it from test.json. Now, our test.json, it's just the string copy and pasted pretty much. Normally, you would be working with the team or on a project, and maybe they give you REST API, version 2, get tweets, and you would hit this URL instead, and it would output dynamically JSON, but it's still just outputting JSON to you. But for us, test.json works, and we're going to do our first JSON or our first AJAX request. This is the shorthand for jQuery. If I were you, I wouldn't overthink this at all and just kind of try to memorize this or write it down somewhere. And all you got to do is call the AJAX helper to a JavaScript and pass in an object with a URL, which for us is test.json. And then we need to, on success, do something, which will, our success, on success is going to pass the result, aka the JSON data, to us, and we're just going to log it, hit refresh, and let's see what happens. So I hit refresh, and we have our JSON data. We've retrieved it. We just did an AJAX request. We're professionals. We're done. But in all seriousness, I want to keep walking through this. So I have here my network tab. So what's happening here is the page loaded. Remember, we're loading all those assets. We're loading all those assets. We get to the very bottom, power.js runs, and power.js makes a web request to test.json, where it retrieves the JSON data, and then we just grabbed it in a variable. And that's how that works. You're going to hear about things like get and post. And I'll just do a quick demo of this, even though it's not related to what we're doing right now, where get and post are ways to send data. And I'm not going to go too much into it, but for example, if we wanted to send an object ourselves, we could say test equals, yo, dude, this is a test. And we can send test1 is equal to another test. Yo, this is another test. And get rid of this trailing comma. I'm going to refresh here. And I'm sending a GET request, which through the network tab, I can just copy and paste it out. But all it is query parameters. So we're sending test and test1. And if we would inspect this, it kind of tells you the query string parameters. The other type is post, P-O-S-T. And this is a little bit different because this data is not sent as a query parameters. And it's showing error just because there's nothing to retrieve anything. But the data is being sent as a post request. And that's kind of how you would do submissions of forms or logins or anything like that. You'll get that if that is totally new to you. The more you do development, that kind of comes naturally, and I wouldn't worry too much about it. But with that being said, I'm going to just comment this out, and that way you guys can mess with it later if you want. And what we're going to do is we're just going to copy and paste our Twitter loop here with our deal with it stuff. And what we'll do is we'll just copy and paste it here. This is going to be so easy, where all we have to do now is say var tweets is equal to the data returned. And then we'll run our normal loop, and hopefully this will update our Twitter feed on refresh. So let's do it. And it seems to work. I'm hitting refresh. It's working. I want to do another test just to make sure. So let's just change the text on one of them. It does. It's working. This is pretty nice. That's AJAX. That's how it works. If you're doing a lot of AJAX, again, don't try. Look, I would probably move on to another framework beyond jQuery, but it's totally normal and okay to do a whole bunch of AJAX with kind of forms and stuff the way that we're doing it here.